Hello everyone and welcome to Gettysburg National Military Park. My name is Thompson Dasher and I'm a fellow with the Civil War Institute at Gettysburg College. One of the greatest challenges in battlefield interpretation is trying to understand exactly how Civil War soldiers fought one another on battlefields such as this. And we tend to brush over a lot of the bonds that these men are able to form with each other over the course of their service that enabled them to stand toe-to-toe and endure the horrors of Civil War combat. Today I'm going to be talking about one Union regiment in particular that bonded together and proved themselves here on July 1st, 1863. Right now, I'm standing just west of the Lutheran Theological Seminary in a field between Seminary and McPherson's Ridge, the site of some of the heaviest fighting during the first day of the Battle of Gettysburg, and where the 151st Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry Regiment had their first real taste of combat. Their actions here would earn them a widespread admiration in the Army of the Potomac, cementing their representation into the legacy of the battle. Now, in order for us to fully understand the actions of these men, let's take a look at how the regiment came to be. The 151st Pennsylvania was mustered into service in October of 1862 at Camp Curtin in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The regiment drew from all across the state. Companies A and C hailed from Susquehanna County, Company B from Pike County, Company F from Warren County, Company D from Juniata County, and Companies E, G, H, K, and I from Berks County. This rush of enlistments came following Robert E. Lee's invasion of Maryland and subsequent engagement at the Battle of Antietam in September of 1862. The war had reached many Pennsylvanians' doorsteps, and those who had not already answered their country's call soon jumped to defend their homes against the threat of yet another invasion. From November of 1862 through the following spring, the 151st never really had the chance to prove themselves in combat. They'd undergone rigorous training and mainly been posted to guard duty throughout the state of Virginia. It was during this time when the regiment of Pennsylvania farmers began to experience the rigors of Army life. Private Lyman Beebe of Company C wrote to his wife, "Last Wednesday, I was detailed with a squad of men from our company to go out on picket duty. We marched out 2 miles and posted on the bank of Bull Run Creek. It is a rather tight place to put a man, for he has to stand 24 hours, rain or shine." Now, flashing forward to the Chancellorsville campaign, Adjutant Samuel Allen reported more on the grit of the martial lifestyle that these men were subjected to. He said, "Our march continued through rain and darkness, the men wading sometimes to a depth of 2 feet through mud and water. In one place, a man could be seen standing on 1 foot, his shoes stuck in the mud below." So though the regiment had yet to experience a real action, the shared experiences of wartime conditions allowed the Pennsylvanians to form tight bonds of camaraderie with one another, despite hailing from all across the state. And by the time of the Gettysburg campaign, the regiment was very eager to experience combat. They had been assigned to Colonel Chapman Biddle's brigade of Major General Abner Doubleday's 3rd Division, 1st Army Corps. In the afternoon of July 1st, Biddle's brigade arrived on the field at Gettysburg to support the Battered Iron Brigade, holding its position in Herbst Woods, McPherson's Ridge. The 151st was initially deployed on the far right of Chapman Biddle's brigade, but they were soon called back to serve as a final reserve for both Biddle's brigade and the Iron Brigade, and they deployed behind me near the seminary itself. Across Willoughby Run were 3 Confederate brigades of Major General Henry Heath's division, which launched their attack just before 3 p.m. J. Johnson Pettigrew's North Carolina Brigade was positioned at the center of this Confederate advance and exploited the gap between Biddle's brigade and the Iron Brigade. The 26th North Carolina hit the Iron Brigade at a crook in its line, which allowed the 11th North Carolina to approach the Iron Brigade from the south, rolling up their left flank. Meanwhile, Pettigrew's remaining regiments struck the left of Biddle's brigade, which also found itself in danger of being outflanked. Back on Seminary Ridge, the 151st Pennsylvania knew that they too would be in the thick of the action very soon. But until then, they could only watch as their fellow Pennsylvanians were cut down. Brigadier General Thomas Rowley, who had assumed command of the division, soon noticed that the Iron Brigade was in a dire situation. He ordered the 151st to advance and fill the gap between the right flank of the 142nd Pennsylvania of Biddle's brigade and the left flank of the 19th Indiana of the Iron Brigade. Unfortunately, just as the 151st reached their position on the edge of Herbst Woods, both the Iron Brigade and the rest of Biddle's brigade began to pull back in the face of the advancing Confederates. This left the 151st alone and entirely unsupported, as they met the brunt of Pettigrew's assault head-on. For the 151st, this was truly baptism by fire, as they faced off against the battle-hardened North Carolinians. Their months of training and preparation did, in fact, pay off, as they fought with tenacity despite the overwhelming odds. Lieutenant Colonel George McFarland, commanding the regiment, wrote, "I know not how men could have fought more desperately, exhibited more coolness, or contested the field with more determined courage." Just half an hour after arriving at their position, McFarland began to realize that his position was unattainable and ordered his men to retreat. As they withdrew, they were caught in a deadly crossfire between the advancing 26th and 11th North Carolina. During their retreat, they sustained 72% casualties, one of the highest percentages of any Union regiment here at the battle. However, their bravery allowed Union forces to withdraw back towards Seminary Ridge and saved the First Corps from total annihilation. Doubleday himself applauded the regiment's performance, saying, "I believe they saved the First Corps and were among the chief instruments to save the Army of the Potomac and the country from unimaginable disaster." The 151st Pennsylvania had proved their worth, halting the Confederate advance in their home state, and suffered greatly. This brings us back to an early point. What gave these men the courage and discipline to stand against certain death? In the years since the Civil War, historians have often attributed a unit's identity to their fighting prowess. The 151st became known as the School Teachers Regiment, as historians claim there were hundreds of teachers and students alike in the ranks of the regiment. Many believe this shared academic background brought these men closer together and enhanced their combat effectiveness. But that is not exactly the case. The School Teachers Regiment was investigated by Michael Dries in his book, Like Ripe Apples in a Storm. And contrary to popular knowledge, there were less than 60 academics listed on the muster roll for the regiment. In fact, the regiment itself was never known to have acknowledged or publicized its scholarly connections, as the first use of the term School Teachers Regiment was not used until the 1930s. So what exactly does this mean? Did the 151st struggle to form a unified identity? With having men from all across the state, it's difficult to say, but one thing is for certain. The actions of the regiment here at Gettysburg demonstrated how the shared experience of military training, picketing, and campaigning brought these men closer together than any shared occupation could have. Despite the massive casualties suffered by the regiment on July 1st, the unit regrouped and participated in the repulsive Longstreet's assault on July 3rd. They were mustered out of service just a few weeks later and returned to their homes as heroes. In closing, I'd like to read a quote from William Orton Blodgett, who commanded Company F during the battle. He acknowledges the selfless sacrifice of the men and the courage they exhibited on the field of battle. He said, "Our poor boys fell around us like ripe apples in a storm. God bless them. They were and are heroes, every one of them." Thank you very much for watching.